Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where two rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shano.
And I'm the Chameleon.
Welcome aboard. On with the show. Well, Chameleon, thank you for joining us again. Another jam-packed episode this week. We've got their semester 2 reports. They're in to see how each of your teams went. We've got finals to preview. It's another competition, really. We've got review of predictions. We've got from 5 weeks ago, which, don't know if that's any good, but we've got...
Yeah, we should see.
We've got basically going to the pinnacle, which is reviewing this week's games, which kicks off on Friday, 7:50, Storm versus Dogs. Griffo, it would be remiss of us not to ask, what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, a lot of things, but from the very first game of the round back on Thursday, I've got to say the guy who was drinking from a toilet last week was maybe sipping some champagne, because he was playing champagne football.
He was brilliant, wasn't he?
Absolutely outstanding. Reece Walsh.
He gave a massive notice to everyone in the finals that he was electric. Brilliant.
Yeah, we expect that, but he limited his number of mistakes. I think he only made one. Came up with a great tackle on, I think it was Coates.
That's what
I didn't expect.
That's what Griffo. I had an inkling that you'd have him. For my 2 cents worth, I just thought his defence was something that I have never seen from him yet.
Yeah, and that had me worried. Not just Walsh, but I thought the whole Broncos side were very, very good. Their defence was outstanding. Melbourne, they didn't really... They looked as though they didn't know what to do in that first half. The Broncos just kept repelling them. They went to Coates to see if they could get a try in the air, and the Broncos just sort of pushed him out of the way and didn't get penalised. You gotta give credit now. It's not a secret here that I don't like the Broncos. If you've ever listened to this podcast, they're not my favourite team. But credit where it's due, and they were very good against the Storm.
I agree.
And that made me think, gee, these guys could win the comp, and I didn't think that previously.
4 weeks ago, I thought the Broncos were one of those teams that were going to be a nuisance team more than a premiership team. Those teams in the past where, the Sharks have been that nuisance team where there's first and second week, they finish top 4, they go first and second week, they provide some resistance. The Broncos I saw last week was, and I suppose I've got a soft spot for Maguire, with my history with South. What I saw in the Broncos last week is very reminiscent of South Sydney. When he had that team where it's like you win the little moments and you sort of like, I remember at South he created a steal in the team, and look, he didn't have the troops at South that he's got at the Broncos. Like at South Sydney when he turned up and they got in the finals his first year. Even the second year, there was Greg Inglis was there and Sam Burgess, but very young Adam Reynolds, a very young team. And whilst they're household names now, they were fresh out of 20s. I thought when I watched last week's game, I went, this guy's got them humming, and he's got far more troops. I thought they were scary last week. I thought they were scary. And that's, I know a lot's been said about Maguire, but in a very short space of time, his long-term accolades include a very successful career in England, winning what was seen as the impossible grand final for South Sydney. He then had a stint at the Tigers where I think the players and the CEO was the problem, not the coach. He came to the Blues and he created one of the greatest, one of the greatest, happiest moments we've had in a while.
Yep.
And now he's there with these kind of players. It's scary. I think it's scary. And Sunday at 4:05, it's going to be premium viewing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolute premium viewing. Look, I suppose we're going to go through the teams, so that's, the top 8. That's probably all we really need to know. The Newcastle Knights have done something which I didn't realise until I saw it. 2005, 2015, 2025, wooden spoon.
Oh.
In that time, though, 5 wooden spoons, that's probably something the club doesn't want. I think, look, we're not going to spend too much time on the Newcastle Knights, but they've got everyone associated with the Knights distancing themselves. I think they're a club that need a very, very good, hard look at themselves. They capitulated at the back end of that season. I think they only had about 3 players who were honestly playing rugby league, and when everything's on the line, like they've gotten pumped in the last 5 to 6 weeks, and I dare say, they're our wooden spooners. So, as far as accolades go in the NRL, I don't like to say you win the wooden spoon because I don't think you win it, but they've got it. So they've been given the wooden spoon. Let's go through the draw. So we're going to go through the draw, bottom to top, the ladder. Sorry, bottom to top, and we're going to go through our report card for this semester, Griff.
Semester 2, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be keen to hear your thoughts.
Shano, you're a person who puts a lot of preparation into these podcasts.
Yep.
I've done some preparation. I don't normally do, but this week I have.
No, you're brilliant.
So no, I normally just wing it, but tonight, yeah, I've spent a bit of time looking back at, and we'll talk about our top 8 predictions earlier. I've listened to the show from earlier in the year to write them down, and then also our predictions from
5 weeks ago,
leading into round 23,
yes,
when there's 5 games to go, and we made some predictions. But we'll get to those. But first, the report cards are in for semester 2.
Well, let's go with it, Griffo. What have you got for the Newcastle Knights?
Oh, we're going from that end.
Yeah, let's go from that end. Let's work up.
All right. Okay.
Because let's get rid of the junk.
Well, so I have gone through from rounds 14 through to 27. Yeah. So there were 14 rounds. Because the odd number of rounds there are.
Yes.
So semester 1 we had from round 1 to 13. Semester 2, the 17th ranked team was the Newcastle Knights.
Well, let's run with what have you ranked them, have you, Griff?
Yeah.
Well, let's go with that. Let's go from the bottom top of your rankings.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, these are not my rankings. These are just...
This is what they got. Yeah, of course. Let's run with that. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so at number 17...
would be the Knights.
Was the Knights. They had 2 wins out of 14 rounds, but 10 losses. and they had 2 buys. So they come up with a total of 8 points. They had a differential of minus 231, which was obviously
that's
a
what got
disaster.
me when I was sort of looking through for this podcast. The differential, because they ended up with a minus 300, which is massive in this competition. Like, it was like 638 points against. They were light years away from that halfway through the season. They've had a horrendous. They're an F for me. You couldn't get being winless is about the best you can do. I think they've been abysmal.
Yeah, I can't argue. I only went up to E. They've got an E.
Yeah, they got their E for me.
They were sort horrible. Of 6 weeks ago. You could say that they were trying, they were defending reasonably well, but they were generally being outclassed. But in the last 5 or 6 weeks, I think they've conceded over 40 every game, or there might have been one game that was only 38. But what I saw, I only watched the mini. I saw a team against the Eels that gave up.
The
defense
was so bad.
Well, it was pathetic.
It was horrific. And you know what? The Eels shut up shop at halftime. If that was anyone in the top 8, they could have had 80 put on them.
Well, they were awful. You can't just blame the coach. Really, and I've not been a big fan of O'Brien. I don't think he's a good coach. But it's on the players. They were the ones that were missing those tackles.
Yeah,
O'Brien's not telling them, just let him go through the middle and score under the post. Like, I don't want to talk too much about him because there's nothing good to say.
But it's they
were awful.
They were awful. They'll probably in that back end of the season, they were a true wooden spoon candidate. I know the Titans conceded more, but the Titans had an attack. I just thought that they were abysmal, and there was just they were a ruddle of shit. Like, there were certain games there where, and I feel for their fans. I'm going to say, this is the final piece I'm going to say on the Knights. When they played the Broncos at Old Boys Day, their fans came out in force for that club. It was a sellout. It was a sellout. The fans turn up and look, their average crowds have been very good for a team that's finished last. You've got to give your fans something better than that to watch. I'm sorry. That's the last I've got to say. Yep. Okay. Who, in semester 2, who was the next one on the?
Number 16 was actually, this might surprise you, Shano. It was the red and white, the Red V, the Dragons.
Yeah, right. That is somewhat surprising, actually.
Yeah. They won 3 games only.
Yep.
They lost 10, and they had the 1 bye. So they had also 8 points. They had a minus 133.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't think they were anywhere near as bad as the Knights, even though they got the same number of points. I've given them a D.
Yeah.
They've beaten teams like the Raiders. I think they beat the Storm. Not with reserve grade teams, but, with strong sides. And they've been able to get up and win some games against top 4 sides. Yet they've really had a poor season when you look at it.
I
but a lot of their losses have been by very low scores.
Yes, they have
games they had won, and go back to round 1 or 2 when they played the Rabbitohs.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, and they went down by a field goal in a game that they never should have lost.
They should never have lost that.
Yeah, so when you look at it, they've actually had a pretty poor season when you look at ladder position, but particularly the second half of the year. In semester one, they had 5 wins and 6 losses. So the back end of the season hasn't been good. And I know they've had injuries, particularly in the forwards, but they would have expected better. There was talk of them being a top 8 side probably only 6 or 7 weeks ago. But I don't think they've won since then. And they tried against Penrith, but, you know, they were outclassed. But I do think there's hope for the Dragons. They've got a lot of good young forwards. They need a decent number 7.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you, Griff. I think the biggest problem is for Coach Flanagan, he knows that 3/4 of his team picks itself. It's the other quarter that just don't turn up week in, week out, and he's struggling. I think he's struggling with what to do there. At times, for me, halves, yes, there are players that just aren't of NRL standard. You know, Sloane's been told to look elsewhere, and rightly so. I think Coach Flanagan is building a team very reminiscent of what the Sharks were, and that needs a very, very strong 1, 6, 7, 9, and he had that at the Sharks. He had a very, very good
and a smart guy, Maloney.
Especially Maloney was brilliant, and McEnnis.
No,
hard
absolutely.
guy McEnnis. So it wasn't as if that's what he wants to build, and he just doesn't have that yet. I've got a D for them as well in my report card. There was shades of something, but just weren't there. Who's next, Griff?
Number 15 was the Gold Coast Titans.
Yeah.
They had 3 wins, 10 losses, 1 bye. They were minus 87, 8 points. And that was enough to get them a D.
Yep.
They got there on the back of turning around a big deficit against the West Tigers, who should not have lost that game.
No,
but they did. The Gold Coast have got plenty of attack. They've got some really, really skillful players, and they put it together in the second half. Got off the bottom of the ladder, and Des has coached his last game, I would say, in the NRL. He's managed to go through his career without winning a spoon, and he can be very thankful to the likes of AJ Brimson, young Campbell, and Kinney. Kinney was out for most of the year, so he made a difference. And we'll talk about who we had in our top 8, but I actually had the Titans in there start of the year. I thought they got all these.
I thought they'd get close.
Yeah. Well, they didn't, but they've got a D from me, Shanos.
D from me. The one thing I've got for the Gold Coast that I think can, for me, the Gold Coast, they're just lazy. Like I'll give you a stat about the Gold Coast that blows my mind. They got a better attack than the Warriors.
That doesn't surprise me.
They're not too far from the Panthers and the Bulldogs. Like, when you look at it, 520, I think the Panthers are about 576 and 76, and Bulldogs 534. When you look at that, they've got good attack. Like, they can score points. And we often talk about the Eels scoring prowess. They've got a better they've got a better attacking. It's their defence. They just don't care. They're a D for me. I think I said it a couple of weeks ago. As far as my arse faces south, they're not going to change anything until there's a significant culture shift in that club. And we know of great rugby league sides in the past you'd rather have, and we're going to talk about the Dolphins soon. You know, it's all well and good to say that your 4 column has an immense amount of points, but if your against column's got more, or you're not winning games, it doesn't matter. You'd rather win ugly than lose pretty, and I think the Gold Coast Titans, there's this. I don't think they're a club that's going to change a lot until some sort of culture shift happens in that club. But yeah, I've got.
I think Honey might bring that.
Hope so, but the players have to buy into it.
Yeah,
and they've got to buy into it bloody quickly.
Foreign, by the way, I didn't mention he was really good on.
Yeah, I thought Foreign was great.
Yeah, they got it. He sort of gives them some direction. Obviously, that was his last game. Great career from Kieran Foran. It's sort of a roller coaster ride for him in so many ways, but he's come out the end and really, he's had a great career, and I think we'll see him a lot in the media. Well spoken, great knowledge of the game,
and very knowledgeable.
Yep.
Who's next, Griff?
Number 14. Are your
I would have thought. I would have thought we were one earlier. I was amazed we went one earlier.
Yeah, so they had 3 wins, 9 losses, and 2 byes for a total of 10 points, minus 123. They were really the worst affected by injury. They really struggled, but I was impressed with the last probably 3 or 4 rounds. They got some wins that I didn't expect, which they were looking down the barrel of possibly being the Spooners this year, but they averted that. But still a D for semester 2.
I got the same.
Just with the 3 wins. They had 6 wins in semester 1. The season fell away in the middle and latter part of the season, but to their credit, they did really turn it around and get some unexpected victories towards the end. So a D for the Rabbitohs.
I think that the key game for me was the belting after semester 1, the belting against Newcastle. That was where I thought things were looking ominous. No surprise that Jai Gray's return meant a surge in form. I think South Sydney's problem. I go back to the Sharks game where South Sydney probably should have won that. They held them out and they defended well, and it looked like the South Sydney were actually just building a game on defence, and they didn't win that game, which was all right. It was when they then played the Broncos and got belted a little bit. For South Sydney, the one thing that Bennett needs to work on is patience. And when South Sydney has patience, South Sydney wins games. Jai Gray returning was definitely something that needed to happen. Against the Roosters, they showed absolutely no patience. They just wanted to outscore the Roosters, which you're not going to do. Mark will outscore you every day of the week. I felt that the game plans at times were wayward. I don't know if that's Bennett's fault. I think that the people on the field led it that way. It's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be an interesting off-season. For no other reason than people are going to be fit. And that's something South Sydney hasn't had for a while. I've got them as a D in the back end of the season. I thought their steel was better than what they showed at times, and that's probably the disappointing thing. But I've got them as a D, Griff, and I'm amazed. Look, to finish on 9 wins at one stage was a minor miracle. 24 points. It's their defence, the 608, which I think South Sydney fans would be somewhat concerned by. But yeah, it is what it is, and I suppose the silver lining for South Sydney fans is they've got an off season where the majority of their players will be fit. However, we know a couple of those players will play for the Kangaroos, and they'll need to be come through that unscathed. But yeah, I've got that the same. Who's next, Griff? I reckon
number 13 from the north of the country, the North Queensland Cowboys, who won 4 games, had 9 losses, won by minus 118 for 10 points, and also a D.
Yep.
After round 13, the Cowboys were in 6th position on the ladder, albeit that they had the same number of wins and losses. They just had a couple of byes, so it was a little bit inflated. But they've had a poor season all round, but particularly in the second half of the year, a lot of poor performances. They get up every now and again for a win because they've got talented guys like Scotty Drinkwater and Tommy Dearden in their team, and then those guys are elite players. But yeah, disappointment for those guys. I think they in the second last round they had a victory, and then they finished off with a bye, so that got them a little bit up the ladder and out of the bottom 4. I think I haven't got a ladder in front of me. I'll just get the actual.
They're 12th.
Ladder.
They're 12th.
Okay, so just above the Tigers on the ladder.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah,
they're odd point, of course, against you guys.
Most people would consider that's not good enough given the roster, but it could have been worse. Anyway, so D for the Cowboys in semester 2. Shano, what do you think?
I've got a D for the Cowboys. They were an exceptionally bland rugby league team in the back end of that season. I thought, I agree with you. When you look at who they've got, and you look at some of their strike power, and you look at some of their go forward, and they're the same people that 3 years ago were going, how electric are they? And look at what they're doing, and like, wow, what's this going to? It's mediocre for me. Like when I look at the Cowboys, they're a mediocre rugby league team. I find the Cowboys, and I mean this with no disrespect, I find them very boring. I find nothing exciting about them. There's nothing all that electric about them. I think they're very one-dimensional, and they're in trouble. I would not have said that when Todd Payton took this team over. There's something going on there where either he's coaching to the players or the players just can't rise to the occasion. I got very serious concerns for the long-term future of this team. They are a bland rugby league club to me, and that's not what I thought the Cowboys would be 4 or 5 years ago. D for me.
Yeah, okay. I'm not with you on the bland. I think they do play some attacking, some really exciting attacking football. I think defense is a big issue for them. But,
I just think it's their highlight reel, and you make a good point there, Griff. I think their highlight reel is all they have. Like if you watch them, like I watch most games for 80 minutes, and you just think, mate, why couldn't you, and you make a good point. Why couldn't you have done that when they score a try 10 minutes ago when you're doing one up and kicking? That's what I mean.
There's only one team that had a worse defense than these guys, and that was the Titans. They had 684 points for the season against. I think therein lies their problem, because they did outscore a lot of teams
Yeah.
With a
Yeah.
5:38 on the four.
Look, when they put it on, they put it on.
Yeah.
But they've just got to do it more often.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've had a poor season. But anyway.
I reckon I know who's next, Griff.
Okay. Who do you think's next?
I would have said the Tigers, but I could be wrong. Eels.
Shane, are you looking at my sheet here? Because you're exactly correct. At number 12 in semester 2, with 4 wins, 8 losses, and 2 byes, and a total of 12 points, minus 77 differential, the West Tigers. Now, I have given them a D for semester 2, based on the fact that they had double the number of losses to the number of wins. I gave them a C in semester 1, where they had 5 wins and 7 losses.
Yeah.
So they started the year reasonably well, and then in fact, at one stage, they were in the top 8 early in the piece, even though they dropped a game or two that they should have won. And I cite round 1 against the Newcastle Knights, where they should never have lost that game at Campbelltown, but they did. And there were a lot of other games as well that they should have won, including Leichhardt Oval about 3 weeks ago against the Cowboys, where they had a big lead. They're absolutely on fire, and then they just capitulated late in the game and conceded a huge number of tries. Basically, the same thing happened again up at Seabus last weekend, where I think they led maybe something like 28-12-ish at halftime. Scored some amazingly, some brilliant attacking play, but they didn't score again in the second half. And the Gold Coast, they might have scored 5 or 6 tries in the second half. And that's not good enough. I'm not a Tigers fan, but I do sympathize to some degree for the fans who would have been so excited at Leichhardt Oval. I was sort of excited watching when there was a big game a couple of weeks ago, and they scored amazing tries. The crowd's literally on their feet, and then they just find a way to lose in the second half. So they're D for disappointing, really. This season, they could have been significantly higher up the ladder, but it's almost as though they don't know how to win. If the game went for 40 minutes, they'd be pretty handy. But whether it's a fitness thing, I do not know. But in the last few rounds, they really should have won a number of games, and they were beaten by teams. We're not talking top 8 sides. We're talking the Titans and the Cowboys, who haven't performed well this year, yet they just scored great tries, lots of them, and Tigers, from what seemed to be a winning position, just found a way to lose.
Clutch defeat out of the jaws of victory. I agree with you there, D for me. That game was just immensely disappointing at home too. I really thought that was a big wake up call to the attitude of this club. I've got them as a D. I found at times that they can do these really great things, and it's coupled with, when they conceded those 3 tries, conceding 3 tries isn't the issue. It's the speed at which they conceded them. It was in no
about
time.
5 minutes or something. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous. It just goes to show that they're not there for one another. And whilst Benji's trying to create something, there's a significant chunk of people in that rugby league side who don't give 2 hoots about the West Tigers. That's what you got to address, and that's a D for me. I got them as D.
Overall, they had 3 years in a row where they won the spoon, So they've made progress, no doubt, and they actually at times they actually look like a football side, but they can't play for 80 minutes.
No.
Anyway, that's
why
enough said.
the everyone under about 11 or 10, that's their problem. 80 minutes is beyond them. Who's next, Griff?
Well, I'm going to give you another chance to guess, but not being too bad with your guesses.
I want to say the Eels, but it could be the Dolphins. Who is it?
Well, you've had two guesses and they're both wrong.
I thought they might be the Seagulls.
It's actually the Warriors.
Yep. Okay.
Number 11.
Yep.
The Warriors have won 5 games, lost 7, and had 2 byes. Plus 16. I've got them at a C with 14 points. It's really, when you look at that stat, they've not fallen off a cliff, but they've rolled a bit down a hill. And there's no doubt that's directly the result of injuries to Luke Metcalf, most significantly, and Mitch Barnett.
Yep, 100%.
And as I said, I listened to a podcast from the beginning of the year. It was after round 1, and we both named the Warriors as our wooden spooners.
Yep.
We'd seen a very poor performance in Vegas against the Raiders, so that was sort of obviously highly influential. But they came good, and to the extent that in the first semester they had 9 wins and 3 losses. So they started first half of the year, they were fantastic. It's only in the last few weeks that they dropped out of the top 4. I won't go into what's ahead because we'll talk about that later. But when you look at the stats there, they don't read well for the Warriors in semester 2. Shane.
No, I agree. The Warriors for me, I think when they started winning, I thought, well, they're going to own New Zealand. Like the Wars are just going to, the travel to New Zealand is just going to be nuts. And the problem is in this second half of the year, the first half of the year they were winning everything. In the second half of the year, they just dropped the ball no matter where they are, and they haven't turned this massive groundswell of support behind them into something of a fortress. And we're going to talk about the game later on and our thoughts. And I think that's the missing link here, that really they needed to turn New Zealand and the opposition's travel to New Zealand into something you just don't want to do, like the Storm have done, and Penrith at Penrith Park. I just think in the second half of the year, I know they've had injuries. They've tried to play a brand of football which just hasn't. I don't think it's clicked for them like this. They've tried everyone to play this power game, even RTS sort of running through the middle on the third tackle. They had an attacking flair at the start of the year that was infectious, and I don't think they've gone back to that. I think they've gone back into their shell.
I think that comes, Shane. That's again Luke Metcalf.
Oh, that is Metcalf. That is Luke Metcalf, 100%. And I think the problem is with their injuries, they've tried to play safe, and in playing safe, it's actually been to their detriment. I think what they've got to do, and we'll talk about the game coming up, they've got to go back to their attacking flair. Did you give them a C, Griffo?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I gave them a C too. I thought that back end of the season definitely didn't emulate what they had at the start, but it shows the fragility of and I think we mentioned this in a podcast a little while ago, the fragility of the Warriors, playing roster, that they have these injuries, and it's led to and we know that someone gets injured, they've got no one to step up. Yeah, I've got them as a C. I think there were key games they should have won, especially in New Zealand, that they let slip through their fingers. Who's next?
Number 10, the Bulldogs.
Yep, I would have said that. Yep.
7 wins, 6 losses, 1 bye, minus 46 for 14 points overall. Or 16 points. I've got them as a C. And in semester 1, from 13 rounds, they had 22 points. So it's been quite a turnaround in their fortunes. Many would point to the fact that they changed their 7, they changed their 9, and as we look at it, I know the season's not over, but you'd have to say that's been a mistake up to this point. Because what team changes their halfback and their hooker mid-season when they're on top of the ladder? I've not seen that ever before.
Why would you do it? It's idiotic.
Well, it appears that way based on these statistics. If they end up winning the comp, it's a masterstroke, but I don't think they're winning the comp. But anyway, they're sort of, with those stats, they're about what I think of them as a football team. They're a goodish side, but they lack a bit of class. And I won't bang on about it because I've talked about in the last 3 or 4 podcasts that I think they've got a few really good players, and the rest are first graders, but not really going to worry you too much. And that's sort of how the results have come up second semester.
Yeah, likewise, we've had our discussions on this. I think their biggest problem is been the fact that, they've fallen out of favour with Reid Marnie. It has not shored up the middle. Opposition teams have just waltzed through that corridor. When he's on, he's sort of back in favour somewhat. I don't think Lachlan Galvin has gelled with Burton in the way that they thought would happen. He definitely hasn't taken the bull by the horns. I tell you now, and I don't care. People can argue with me. Lachlan Galvin Bulldogs is in no way, shape, or form Lachlan Galvin at the Tigers. He has not been as good as he was at the Tigers. I'm sure there's statistics that could probably dispel that. I'm telling you now, he just can't fire the way he did at the Tigers. I don't know why. Probably because he trained in an off-season with the Tigers and not with the Dogs. That's call me old-fashioned. That's my ideal. I think the Dogs have cut off their nose to spite their face. And right now, they are staring down, going out the back door twice if they don't start sharpening up. I thought the back end of the year for the Dogs was in no way, shape or form that of a rugby league team that wants to make a red hot crack at this competition. And you know what? I think the coaching staff should have eaten a bit more humble pie and maybe gone back to what worked than trying to struggle with what's not working. I've got them, they're a C for me, but geez.
Well, they've got about 5 years to get it right because they've all had extended contracts.
Yeah, that's right. But it's just... At the start of the year, I thought they were one of the most dynamic rugby league sides running around. And right now, I can't say that. Who's next, Griff?
Number 9. The Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, who we've seen the best and the worst of them several times this year. 6 wins, 6 losses, 2 byes, minus 25, differential 16 points. C. They had 6 wins, 6 losses, 1 bye in first semester. So it looks as though they're consistent, but they're not. They're either really good or they're really awful. And I think they'll be disappointed that they didn't make the... Well, of course they're disappointed they didn't make the 8. But there's been so much go on at that club this year, mainly around DCE. That hasn't helped the team. They finished 10th on the ladder. Maybe if there wasn't that upheaval, maybe they might have made the 8. But yeah, we saw them finish the year with a victory. They've had some really good games, but again, they've sometimes have been awful. That's been the Manly way, and but it's a C for me.
C for me. I agree with you. Everything you said, 100%. I think they've been probably one of the most. Look, I know that they've been one of the most inconsistent sides. When all of a sudden you can play good football and then you don't. It's just bizarre. I just thought that there are times this year where they let in points and tries when they lost games where you go, what are you doing? Like really? Like that you know, it's I think there were certain points throughout this year where Seabold was struggling with his roster on who he was trying to hang his hat on, and especially with his reserves. Who was coming on just could not do the job of those that were coming off, and not to the quality that he needed, and therefore that was the window where oppositions would just score points. Everyone getting older. I'm trying to find. I think they lack class in this back end of the season. I've got them as a C2. Who's next, Griff?
Well, we're into the top 8 now.
Ooh.
And in second semester, in 8th position is the Parramatta Eels.
Yep.
Now, they had 6 wins, 6 losses, 2 byes, plus 11 for a total of 16 points, compared to just 10 points in first semester. I've given him a C because as many wins as losses.
That's where it's at.
There is no doubt that this team has given their supporters at the back end of the season a lot of hope for the future. They started woefully down in... they got pumped by the Storm, 50-plus, in round 1. And I think it took them a few games before they got a first win. I think they got a golden point win with Lomax kicking a field goal against the Dragons. They spent much of the year without their captain, Mitchell Moses, who, I mean, when he's been on the field pretty much every week, he's been brilliant. And the difference, in their season is largely, looking at the injuries. I think he had a couple of things that kept him out for long periods. There's hope for these guys. They're long suffering, the Parramatta Eels fans, and some of them I feel for, and some of them I don't, because some of them are just, well, they're the rival to my club, and some of them just love to hate, and that's all they've got. They get excitement when Penrith don't go well, And when that's where you're at, you got a problem, because if you're getting excitement out of another team going down who are 4-time premiers, and then the best you can do is be happy when Penrith lose, then you're not happy that often. In saying that, as I said, not all of their supporters are like that. Some of them have actually, can realise that, they've had a few issues, but all of them will be helpful, because Riles, to his credit, has most of the things he's done have turned up looking like, really good. He's almost completely changed his pack, more mobile, not necessarily looking for size, but looking for mobility. Guys like Jack Williams have had a really good year. There's hope for these guys. Whether they can, and they played with a great level of freedom in the last, towards the back end of the year. There's nothing to lose. Throw the ball around. They got plenty of skill, plenty of speed. So that worked well for them. Whether that, from day one next year, whether they can do the same thing and win lots of games is to be seen. Obviously, their defence has been a bit of an issue. Yeah, they've proved they can score points. But you've got to, if you're a Para fan, you're looking forward to, next season coming around really quick, because they finished the season well. They thumped the Knights. They put 66 points on them. And lots to look forward to. But as far as semester 2 goes, they're a C with equal number of wins and losses. Shane.
Yeah, you can't give anything more than wins or losses. They felt stronger than what they were. I agree that the game for me that really told the story of the Eels this year was against South Sydney. Funnily enough, I went with no confidence. I thought we were going to get thumped by the Eels, and South Sydney won, and I couldn't believe it. I just thought, and that's where they were at. I thought, here's a side that, in saying that, I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, and they asked me, Shane, what's the one club outside the 8 that could give everyone else a run for the money? And it's the Eels. If the Eels had finished 8th, they would have had a red hot crack at anyone that they play. I think the Eels next year, I agree with you. I think their fans will be very buoyed by what they've done. I think it's going to be a very interesting off season for them. They're a watch this space, because for me, they feel like the Roosters were last year, and the Roosters finished 8th and done very well. So yeah, I think that they're a C, but yeah, I think that their fans have something to cheer about moving forward. It would take a monumental stuff up for them not to do well next year, in my opinion. Who's next?
Number 7, the Dolphins from Redcliffe.
Yeah.
7 wins, 5 losses.
Yeah.
2 byes, plus 83, 18 points, and I've given them a B. Yep. No, they've finished the season quite well. They're again another team that's been heavily affected by injuries. Basically, almost the whole forward pack unavailable. They've done really well. Then unfortunately, Herbie got injured as well. So
once Herbie got injured, that was it.
Yeah, that was the season over. Well, they're in position, but it was always going to be hard without, Herbie's world class. And as it turned out, they were just, 2 points out of the top 8. They've had a good season, given it the injuries. So I think they've done really well. They've pumped a number of sides when they had some massive wins against, some of them against quality opposition. This is a team that when they get a bit of ball, a bit of confidence, literally can score from any part of the field. Great speed. This is a team that's only their third year in the competition. The guys that have been responsible for putting this side together can be proud of themselves, because all the talk when they were coming in, they couldn't get a marquee player. They missed out on Munster, one or two others that they were targeting, but mainly it was Munster. They got the hammer, and the Cowboys have got to be thinking, how do we let that guy go? Whoever was responsible for that, just, hang your head in shame, because I think it was Peter Hiku that was playing in the back line for the Cowboys at the time, and the hammer couldn't get a look in. They went for Drinkwater at fullback. I can't criticise him for that, because he's quality. But they had to find a spot for the hammer. He went elsewhere, and he is a marquee player now at the Dolphins. But I've got him as a B. They started the year off with 4 losses, so it was always going to be uphill. But they did make their way at stages into the 8. And overall for the season, they had 12 wins, 12 losses. So they've got to be content with that. They won't be happy because they didn't make the 8, but they can certainly, there's much to look forward to for this team. And they will expect next year to be in the top 8, particularly if Thomas Flegler can come back and get close to where he was at before his awful injury. Because they'll also have Gilbert back. Safiti missed most of the season. There might have been a couple of other forwards. Plath, who was very good. So there's lots to look forward to. We talked about Para. Looking forward to next year. Well, these guys, I think, are even in a better position than them. So exciting times for the people of Redcliffe and surrounds. Shano.
Yeah, I agree, Griffo. The Dolphins, B for me. They're the best attack in the competition by a country mile. They can score points where at times in the second semester they could score points where points just weren't on offer. Interestingly, I've done a bit of homework that they concede a lot of the points. When Herbie Farnworth got injured, they actually conceded a lot down that 3-quarter line of Herbie Farnworth's, which actually highlights just how much of a important defensive player he was in that team. And I think that going forward is something that's very interesting, because when he got injured, I really felt for the Dolphins. I actually thought that it was over for them. For that reason, he you can talk about the attack, but he was so good in defense, and that 3-quarter line, opposition's exploited as you would, and that's where the points were. They came 9th, and my heart bleeds for them, because 9 out of 10 times recently, if you finish with equal amount of points, you're probably in the 8. The Roosters and the Panthers had a phenomenal back end of the season. I don't know if they would have challenged anything because of their defense, but yeah, I really think that if the Dolphins can get a fit season under their belt of everyone playing without injury, geez, they could really give this a red hot shake. I think their attack this year is one of the best we've seen in a very long time, and that comes with the fact that the Panthers have had a 4-peat. The great Roosters sides of previous years the Melbourne Storm sides, I think that the attack of this Dolphins team has been absolutely world class. It's just the fact that the opposition with injuries have been able to exploit their deficiencies in defence. I've got them as a B. I think they've done pretty well.
Number 6, the Cronulla Southern Sharks. 8 wins, 4 losses, 2 byes, 20 points in semester 2 with a plus 65 differential. I was a little bit surprised. Maybe they've flown under the radar a little bit, but they've obviously they've done well in the second half of the year. And I've got that at a B. While they've won twice as many games as they've lost, they're not convincing really, or they haven't been, and it's a very big game for these guys on the weekend. We'll talk about that a bit later, but stats wise, they look very good with 8 wins, 4 losses, and a healthy plus 65 differential. Shane.
Yeah, I take it with a frag grain of salt. I hear what you're saying. They had a bye in round 13, and they got pumped by the Warriors the week before. They got pumped by the Roosters. They beat the Dragons, beaten by the Broncos, beaten by the Storm. They then beat the Dolphins in round 19. They beat the Roosters. That's the game I actually thought that they'd risen to the table. They then played South Sydney and really were lucky to win 14-12 against it. And that's South Sydney side, and I only know this because I go for them. That's probably at South Sydney at their worst, when they were depleted at their worst at 14-12. They beat the Cowboys 32-12. They got beaten by the Dragons. They pumped the Titans, which should have happened. And then they beat the Knights, got beaten by the Dogs. They beat the Dogs last week, in a depleted side. There's a lot of those games where I go, they probably got some good points against ordinary competition.
That's a traditional
way
for them over the last decade.
You're 100% right there. There is something about the Sharks I just can't set my watch by. And I don't know what it is. Like, it's definitely they are a different beast at home. That's fair to say. I think in all those games that they've won, the majority of them have been at home. So being at home, they've definitely built a fortress at Shark Stadium.
Not a very big one.
It's a friggin' horrible ground. and when Buzz Rothfield whinges about the ground, you're in trouble. It's a horrible ground. It's the only thing the Sharks have to hang their hat on. Letter of the law, marking what? Yeah, let's put them at a B. But geez, I struggled, Griff. I really struggled to give them a B because
I understand,
because
they haven't been convincing.
They haven't lit the world alight. B minus, but I'm telling you now, they could upset. If you look at the fact that the Sharks ground is a fortress for them, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but they could upset the Roosters. When you look at the computations of how they've won at home, they could well and truly do things at Shark Park that haven't been done. And in round 20, they pumped the Roosters there. So, yeah, I've got them as a B, but geez, it's a B minus. Who's next?
Okay. Number 4 is the Melbourne Storm.
Yep.
They had 10 wins, 3 losses, 1 bye. Sorry, I missed one. Number 5, we didn't do number 5, and that is the Sydney Roosters.
Yep.
8 wins, 4 losses, 2 byes, so same as the Sharks, statistically, 20 points, but they were plus 154. So when they were winning, they were pumping teams.
They did it well.
They looked, because I speak in the sort of current text. They're in red, white, and blue hot form. They've got a B. They've had their off games. They lost against the Eels a couple of weeks ago, which was unexpected. So they've not been overly consistent, but they too have been affected by injuries. It's not long that they've got Sam Walker back, and he's made a big difference to them. And they're great to watch, the Roosters, because you're going to see some exciting tries. Marky Mark right at front and center with that. But unlike the Sharks, who, again, losses and wins were exactly the same, I have a feeling that this team has been very good in the second semester. They were only 5 wins from the first semester. So they've definitely improved, and they're peaking at the right time, Shane.
Yeah, I agree. They're an interesting side. I remember back, they had a really tough game against the Knights. They won 12-8. And it was at McDonald Jones Stadium, and they sort of ground it out. They belted the Cowboys and then lost. They had a bye and then lost to the Tigers. And then they sort of had this period of time where they just beat the Dragons, got beaten by the Sharks, got beaten by the Storm. And then when they pumped the Seagulls, you just went, wow, hang on. And then they smashed the Dolphins. And in smashing the Dolphins, it gave them the confidence against the Bulldogs. And then all of a sudden, they hiccuped against the Eels. For me, the biggest problem is they hiccup every 2 to 3 games. They play this great mode of football, and then they hiccup. Marky Mark, and they've, I think in the second semester, they've done a lot to get it out to that 3-quarter line. But their defence hiccups. Their defence forgets how to play games. Because when you look at it, like the Eels, it was 30 points they put on. When they lost to the Tigers, it was 30 points. My concern, I've got them as a B. I think they're a B, but we're going to talk about the game ahead. If this week you look at the Sharks and the Roosters, where's the hiccup? I thought their game against the Storm was actually outstanding. 10-0 at halftime, 40 unanswered points, and Mark Hen was absolutely phenomenal. They definitely changed what happened the week before, because they conceded 30. Where the Eels, and we've talked about the Eels, but yeah, I give the Roosters a B. I think their attack has been phenomenal, but when it's been lackluster, the defence is not aimed up. But B for me.
All right, in position 4, I gave this away a little earlier. The Melbourne Storm, 10 wins, 3 losses, 1 bye, plus 65, 22 points. But I've given him a B. I just think that they haven't been right at the top of their game. They usually win, and then that's borne out by 10 wins, 3 losses. They have been affected by injuries and suspensions. A lot of people questioning their, they from before the season started, they've been firm favourites to win the comp. I won't go on any more about that, but I'll just say that they've had a few slip-ups, particularly in recent times. They've lost their last 2 games, actually, against good opposition. But I can't give them an A. Obviously, they've won most of their games, but yeah. So B for me.
Yeah, I agree. I look at the Melbourne Storm. When I think back to their bye in round 15, they beat the Bunnies, who at this stage were struggling by 1 point. They smashed the Sharks. If you look at how they've won at times by no more than a try against some opposition. Cowboys is one of those. They pumped the Knights. 18-16 they lost to the Seagulls. 34-30 they beat the Roosters. 10-16 they beat the Eels. The game that really gives it to me is they pumped Broncos 22-2. They then beat the Panthers.
That was the game where three Broncos got injured.
Who was playing for the Panthers, and then they beat the Dogs by getting a try, and then the Roosters pumped them in the second half, and then the Broncos outdid them the other week. I've got them as a B. I really think that they've had. I'm going to draw a line in the sand. I think since about round 20, they've actually struggled. They've struggled at home, and they've won ugly in most of those, and lost ugly as well, by the way. I don't think they're in exceptional. Look, we'll talk about the games and how it's a new competition, but yeah, I've got them as a B, and it's been scratching, like, they've clutched at straws, and at times come up trumps, but at other times have not. I really think that this is a side who is struggling at the moment. They're in trouble, the Storm, and yeah, I think their last, like I said, if you draw a line in the sand, from round 20, they have been lucky to win when they've won, and have struggled at times in most games, except for the Storm. I've got them as a B, but geez, yeah, moving forward they could be in trouble. Who's next?
Okay. Number 3 is the Penrith Panthers. 9 wins, 3 losses, 2 byes, plus 120, 22 points. Now, this has nothing to do with bias. I've actually given them an A, and I'll explain why. And I noticed they've got 3 losses. 2 of those losses were Golden Point losses against the 2 top sides, the Raiders and the Storm. And the other loss was when they played their reserve grade side against the Bulldogs. So they had 9 wins. And I'll offer the flip side of that was a lot of those 9 wins were against reasonably lowly ranked sides, which is true. But I just think in the last half of the year, they've under pressure. They've generally played quite well. in the first semester, they only had 4 wins and they also had a draw. And I gave them a D, and I said, and I didn't think at that stage they were going to make the finals. I just didn't think they were playing well enough. I didn't take into account they've got to win this many games or whatever. They weren't playing well. And I said, well, to make the finals, they're going to need an A in semester 2. And they've done it. Won't go into what's going to happen this weekend. I'll just say that they started to look like the Penrith Panthers of the recent era in that a little bit after the middle of the season. They started to play with confidence. Their defence improved. It was poor at the start of the year. And just an A, but I've got them at an A. Shane.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've got them as an A. They're for me. Their 25-6 loss to the Knights was where we drew the line in the sand, and since then they've stepped up to the plate. The 8-6 win against the Dogs in round 17, I thought really gave them the steel they needed, knowing that there's a bye ahead. And since then, they've just chipped away at certain things. I think people can say, oh, they've played the Tigers, they've played the Titans, they've played the Knights again. But you know what? And the Dragons, to be fair to them, they won the games. There's plenty of times where these sides have upset other teams, and not only they won it well. They knew they had the odd number after the draw against the Cowboys. So they had to turn that into more of a win than a loss for them, and they've done that. It's an A for me because they've just won so many games. Like, there's been hiccups along the way, and look, I think losing 3 in a row. Sorry, I think that's more about where the team are at regarding their roster and how they're trying to develop that than the criticism. But you know what? It's going to be a very interesting game on the weekend. I had them as an A, Griff. So yeah.
Okay, so the number 2 ranked team in the second semester is the Canberra Raiders. 9 wins, 2 losses, 3 byes. That was crucial. We talked about that earlier in the year, that they had a good run home, including the 3 byes. Plus 76, 24 points. Now, obviously, that's an A. Take into account that they lost. One of their losses was playing last weekend against the Dolphins. Yeah. They rested 10 first graders. So you sort of expected they're going to get a loss there. I can't remember who their other loss was. It might have been the Dragons beat them. I think that was the other loss.
Yeah, 18-12. That was a win.
So they've been fantastic, very consistent, and nothing but an A there. Shane.
Yeah, I agree. They've won ugly at times, which is fine. Interestingly enough, when they lost against the Dragons, I thought they looked pretty good. They lost pretty a little bit there, but they're coming home. They beat the Seagulls comprehensively. They had the bye. There was the miracle at Mudgee, and then the Tigers. My thing is, are they going to beat tradition? They got done by 62. That's I've got them as an A. I think they've actually been phenomenal. The game for me, and probably more semester 1, but when they beat the Roosters 24-26, that was a very, very good win. And they just chipped away at things. They just made sure that their home is a fortress. They just made sure that when they were at home, they didn't lose, and they did everything they can to win at home, and that's where it's been at. And you know what? The Broncos have a massive task at hand on the weekend. We'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I got them as an A.
Okay, which means that the number one ranked team in semester 2 is the Brisbane Broncos.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't have expected that because although they've got 10 wins, 2 losses, 2 byes, plus 158, 24 points, same as the Raiders, but a much better differential, and obviously an A. And the Broncos in semester 1, they were 11th with 5 wins and 7 losses, and a lot of talk about the fact that, you know, they brought in a new coach, it's not working, etc., etc. I got to take my hat off to the Broncos. I didn't take them seriously until what I saw last weekend. I do now, and they look very, very dangerous. So 10 wins, 2 losses, that's a great record in the second half of the year. And obviously, yeah, shame.
Yeah, I agree. Their key hiccup was when they lost to the Eels and then the Storm. It's interesting, they played the Storm twice in a matter of what? I think they played the Storm round 23 and then they played them again in round 27. Which is ridiculous.
Well, I was just about to say thanks, people who do the draw these days. Can't blame the Canadians anymore because they don't do it.
No, they don't do it, but that's just ridiculous. And within the space of that time, injuries aside, they figured out what they needed to do. They've been able to win away and at home, which is why I've got them as an A. It's not as if that when they're at home it's a fortress. They can do things away as well. Like that was shown. They beat the Dogs away. They did lose to the Eels at home, but in saying that, my concern is this for them. This is their, if I read out their last sort of few from since their bye. So they lost to the Eels 2022 at home. They pumped South 60-14. They lost to the Storm at home. Stormer at home, sorry. They lost the Storm away. They beat the Dolphins 38-28. They pumped the Knights, pumped the Cowboys, beat the Storm. It's like that win against the Storm really solidifies what they need to do. They've got a massive game. I agree with you. I think they're an A. I think what they've done, what they needed to do to finish where they finished is phenomenal. But they've got a massive game ahead. To finish top 4 from where they were, you have to be an A. But yeah, let's talk about some football that's ahead, I reckon, Griff. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think we'll do that. Then we can talk about what we had as our top 8 at the start of the year.
Let's do that now.
Yeah, talk about the games.
Let's talk about our top 8, because whilst the ladder's here, I've got the ladder up. Who do we have as our top 8?
All right. So I listened to the podcast just before coming on. It was after the Vegas, and also the other round 1 games. I said in this order: Storm minor premiers. Well, I was 1 off there. Panthers number 2. Well, I had them. They were in the 8, but obviously they didn't finish anywhere near second. I had Sharks at 3.
Yeah,
they came 5th, so not too far off. Broncos 4, which is where they finished. Now, you said you agreed with me at the time on the top 4, but without giving the order. But so I just wrote them down as you had in the same order. Yeah. But we both had the same top 4. And then I had Sea Eagles at 5. You had Sea Eagles 6. We were both wrong there. They finished 10th.
Yeah.
You had Bulldogs at 5. I had them at 6. We both know now that they came in at number 3. I had the Gold Coast Titans at number 7, which makes me sound like I've got no idea, which there's a strong argument for that. And you had the Rabbitohs at 7, but there was heart involved.
There was
heart, yeah. So both those teams well down the ladder for different reasons, or probably different reasons, but and we both had the Roosters at 8. So
okay, well we nailed something.
Yeah, we had some things correct and we had some things incorrect, but it looks like both of us had two teams in there that didn't make the 8. So that's not too bad.
It goes to show, I genuinely thought the Titans on paper and what they'd done last year would have excelled. It goes to show just how poor their season's been.
Yeah. Neither of us had the Raiders in there, but
no,
I did make the point that having seen them in round 1, I would have them in the 8. But I said, well, I can't. Let's not pretend, because I did have an 8 before seeing any games, and that's you got to be authentic. It's easy to change your mind after you've seen something, but I certainly said, if I was doing this after round 1, I've got the Raiders in there. I didn't think the Raiders would be, minor premiers, but I certainly thought they'd make the 8. I think you might have. You mentioned the Knights as being on the verge. I think
that was horrible.
Didn't have them in there, but
I just thought. I remember thinking back, because I listened to some old podcasts. I remember I looked at some old notes I had, and I just went, Ponga best, playing for Origin selection. Surely they've got to step up their game. Yeah, there's a series of players, and they just didn't happen. Anyway.
And they did win their first 2 games. So
yeah, well, that's right. Early they looked good.
Slim pickings after that, but they were sitting pretty after round 2. But anyway, that's how it goes. Just quickly, as far as some predictions we were making, we talked about in the road to the semis, starting at round 23. And we had similar thoughts in most cases. I had predicted the Raiders to be minor premiers on 46 points. I got them right on the minor premiers, but they only got to 44 points. Well, they did rest players against the Dolphins.
That's very cool, yeah.
Storm had them coming in second with 42. They didn't make it that high. They only got to 40, but they were second. Dogs, 38 in third, so got that right, although I didn't have the game's wins and losses right. But again, I didn't think Penrith were going to drop basic play reserve grade, but that's where I had them. And I haven't got what you said, but it was pretty similar.
Yeah.
Broncos, hang on. I had Warriors 4th. No, they were 4th at that time. I had Panthers coming in 4th, and I expected them to get to 37. Well, they only made it to 33, and they finished 7th. 5th, I had the Sharks, and on 36, and that I'll give a tick there on that one. Although some variations in where the games were won and lost. 6th, I had the Broncos on 34. Well, they actually made it to 36, and obviously 4th. In 7th position, I thought the Warriors would end up there with 34 points. They did get 34 points, but that was enough to get into 6th place. At the time, they were in 4th, so did see a slide. And in 8th position, I had the Roosters on 32, and that is how that panned out. Now, I think that's as far as really we need to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
We made some predictions.
Yeah.
Some of them turned out correct, and some were slightly wrong. But certainly the top 8, we did get the top 8.
I think my key thing in that latest prediction we made is that the Panthers were always going to rest players.
Yeah, you did say that. And
it was probably a week early, and I think it's smart. When they did it against the Dogs, I said, why would you bash yourselves against the Dogs? Let them have it. What's the point? There's no point trying to bash and beat the Dogs when really you got bigger fish to fry. And I think resting players has been an absolute masterstroke for Panthers. Their last bye was back in Origin. That's an eon ago. I think it's a masterstroke. I think it's great. And they didn't rest the volume I thought they'd rest. They rested everyone, but good on them. I think it's I think what they've done has put them in good stead for what's coming up. And why not? What better time than to talk about the games this weekend and the finals ahead? On Friday, the 12th of September, at 7:50, we have the Melbourne Storm taking on the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. This will be at Amy Park. This is a belter of a game. This will be on Friday. Just please, over the next couple of weeks, listen to when the games are, because there's going to be some changes. Jerome Hughes, Big Nelson, and Ryan Pappenhausen out for the Melbourne Storm. Harry Grant is in for the Melbourne Storm. Bronson Sherry, Montoya out for the Dogs. Jacob Kiraz is in. Toby Sexton named. Where he plays is anyone's guess. It's a big thing to see whether the Bulldogs will pull the trigger. Many people are asking for it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Sorry, Shane, what trigger was that?
Oh, whether Sex Bomb comes.
The mail is that he's going to be part of the 17.
That's exactly right.
And Reed Marnie.
And that's what that's what the mail is. It remains to be seen. If he's in part of the 17, you can't sit a guy on the bench for the whole game. I think this is a really interesting game ahead. This is at Amy Park. Storm, not so much a fortress as it has been, but very much a place where the Storm win more than they lose. The Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, they need to show that they can win away from home with this 1-6-7-9. If you're going to have Connor Tracy, Matt Burton, Lachlan Galvin, and Bailey Hayward as your 1-6-7-9, you need to start winning games with James Salmon at 13. If you're not going to win today, you're never going to win. The biggest point I've got to make here is through the reason why they're in third has been because their 7 and 9 has been someone else. And that is big. I really think Reed Marnie needs to start. I'm glad to see Josh Curran, Tupanua, Kurt Mann on the bench. I think that's really, really going to shore things up. I would actually argue whether you wanted to have James Salmon in it starting. Do you want to shore up that middle? But geez, this is a very, very good game we're going to be seeing. The Melbourne Storm, I've got them winning. I just can't pick against the Storm at home. Griff, who have you got?
Yeah, interesting team list. I can't believe that the Storm are going to be 1-17. You've got Bronson Garlic listed at number 17.
Yeah,
Harry Grant has had a 2-week rest. He's an 80-minute player. There is no way Garlic is going to come on intended as a replacement for Harry Grant. I expect Howarth, if he's fit, will come into the centres, in which case I think we'd see Joe Chan drop back to the bench at the expense of Bronson Garlic.
You know the other guy who I think is going to be interesting, what they do at Falongo?
Well, that was what I was about to say. I would be surprised. Well, I do expect that Howarth will play. I can't see Garlic being there because you got Jonah Pezzett, who he's not going to play hooker, but you got Tyron Wishart in the side, who can do a job if Grant were to get injured, and he'd go to hooker. So there's a lot of flexibility there. I would be absolutely astounded if that 17 is what happens come 8:05, 7:50. 7:50, guys. Don't tune in at 8:05. You will miss 15 minutes. 7:50 p.m. Friday night. The Bulldogs, on the flip side there, they don't look all that strong to me, with guys like Blake Wilson, Tuala in the centres, Rinakam as a rookie. I'd be surprised if, I'll be a little surprised about a lot of things. But for mine, and I know they're talking about Reid Marnie missing out on the 17, I think that is absolute stupidity. He's a guy who's had finals experience, won some semi-final games, hasn't won a grand final, but he's been there before. And if he is not a better hooker at this stage of their relative careers than Bailey Hayward, then I've never watched a game of rugby league in my life. Bailey Hayward is a good player, but he's not a better hooker than Reid Marnie.
I agree.
And maybe he will be in the future. I can't say he'll never be, but to me, he's a utility player. Serraldo's a very good coach, but if the Bulldogs crash and burn, as I expect them to this year, then I would have some serious questions about just how good a coach he is.
My question is, who's in his ear?
Well, obviously Gould.
Yeah.
But he's the coach. He makes the decisions.
Yeah, the buck stops with him.
Yeah. And I know in the past Gould has had massive influence over selections at Penrith when, in the first time Cleary was there, plus, he clashed with Griffin. Maybe Griffin wanted different selections, but I don't think he's quite had that big an influence on the coaching of the side as what he might have had when he was with Penrith. In saying that, I think Melbourne win irrespective of what 17 the Bulldogs put out there, given some of the injuries that they've had. There is talk of maybe Carraz playing. I think that would be, if he's not 100%, then I think that's foolish, because we've seen other guys re-injure themselves in recent weeks, most prominently Jerome Hughes last week. There is a tomorrow if you lose this game. So I would be cautious in playing injured players.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, obviously, Carraz is a better player than anyone they've got listed on the wings there. But he's not a better player if he's not 100% fit. If the Bulldogs are to win, they've got to play at their absolute peak every individual who takes the field, because while Melbourne have not been great in the last few weeks, and yes, you talked about Pappenhausen out, concussion, Nelson out, suspended. I don't think Nelson is a big loss like he was in the past.
Not like he was. Yeah, that's fair.
Even though I thought he actually was very good in the time he was on the field against the Broncos. He got them actually going forward. They were really struggling. And then there's Jerome Hughes. Now, Jerome Hughes is one of the elite players in the NRL. And I guess a lot of people might have thought, well, once Hughes is gone, Melbourne title hopes may be gone with him. But they did play some really good football for a number of weeks without Jerome Hughes, with Wishart in at 7. They didn't have Jerome Hughes against the Panthers, and they won that game. I'm a fan of Pezzett with his long kicking game. So for me, I'd probably think Pezzett. I would start him, Tyron Wishart off the bench as a backup if needed for Grant, but can cover any position in the backs really, as well as hooker. But, we've talked about who may or may not play. Bottom line, I do think Melbourne will bounce back to form. Melbourne without Harry Grant is nowhere near the same team, and they will win this game.
At 4:05 on Saturday at Go Media Stadium in Auckland, we have the New Zealand Warriors taking on the Penrith Panthers. I suppose key ins for the two sides are Wade Egan in for the Warriors, Brian To'o, Liam Martin in for the Panthers. Mitch Kenny out for the Panthers. I think that's a very notable
massive loss
out for them. Look, it would be remiss of me not to get your view on this game immediately, Griffo. You'd be all over this. You'd be watching this closely. I'm happy to give a rebuttal, but please, Griffo, give us your summation of the Panthers versus the Warriors.
Yeah, I was pleased with what Penrith did last week with the players, most of them back in the team. They were still resting Martin and To'o, who both battled with injury throughout the year. Coach Cleary has come under, some have criticised a change that was made and you've got to feel for Milky Jenkins, who's been outstanding this year, but he's lost his spot on the wing to Paul Alamotti. I personally, I agree with that move. Alamotti is a class player, was outstanding in last year's grand final. I was surprised we didn't see him for a number of weeks. So while I do really feel for Tom Jenkins, who picked up a couple of awards last night at Penrith's awards night, I think he won the fans player of the year, the members player of the year, and he also I can't remember but he also won another award. So he's had a brilliant year, considering he was. He went to the Knights. It didn't work out. He was going to come back and play with St. Mary's. And he's ended up not just playing NRL, but excelling this year. I've got a few mates that we have a WhatsApp group. We go, to the home games. And we've talked about Alamotti. They need to find a spot for him. And part of that talk has been putting him in the centres for Tango, and maybe, bringing Tango off the bench as he can obviously play in the backs, but he's also playing the back row. Penrith did that for one game, I think, earlier in the season. But anyway, it is what it is. Alamotti is a very good player. Dylan Edwards, my goodness me. Champion, proven champion. He's got a Clive Churchill medal, but he's down on confidence. Last 3 games that he's played, he's made a number of errors, and many of those have resulted in tries for the opposition in the set after he made an error. A lot of them were unforced as well. In some cases, just trying to play the ball too quickly, didn't actually play the ball. In some cases, he's going up for a bomb and it's, hit his shoulder or it's been turned over. You could see the frustration on his face against the Dragons last week after his errors. I mean, obviously it didn't cost him the game, but at least one of those errors led to a Dragons try in the next set of 6. I do expect he will, it's finals time, and that's when he's at his best. So I'm hoping that obviously he's going to be targeted because he's made mistakes, but I think he'll come good. They've got a few guys here playing in their first final series, Blaise Talongi and Casey McLean, and I know you're a big fan of McLean. He's a weapon. He's had his critics earlier in the year as well, and I'm talking about Penrith fans. But he provides speed, power, and he's actually quite a good defender. Again, he's made mistakes in defence, but Steve Crichton early in his career, very similar. A strong defender, but sometimes made the wrong read. But now he's known as the best defensive centre in the game, Stephen Crichton. So I've got every belief in Casey McLean, who's going to be the future of Penrith, along with Blaise Talongi, who's had a good year. It's a new ball game for him, but he's got plenty of experience around him. I am concerned about the loss of Mitchell Kenny because he leads the defence. And Luke Summerton's a good player, maybe a little bit more skillful in attack. But what Mitch Kenny does is provide good service, usually to Cleary. There's very few mistakes out of dummy half when Mitch Kenny's there. Mitch Kenny went off at half-time. Well, we didn't know at the time. I thought he was being rested, but obviously he was injured. And Brad Schneider took over the dummy half role. And some of the passes he threw weren't very good. So that is a very important area of the game, the dummy half. And I guess that's where the Warriors have an advantage with Wade Egan coming back, who's a very skillful player. Luke Summerton just got a job to do, which is get the ball to Cleary or Talangi, clean ball. He's a good runner of the footy as well, Summerton, and he's just got to have to aim up in defence. He's not a bad defender, but he's certainly no Mitch Kenny. The forwards have been very good. Leota, Smith, Sorensen, you know what you get with him. He's a professional. Liam Martin's had a few weeks off, so he's going to be ready to rip and tear. And Isaiah Yeo is one of the elite players of the game. Henry, who had his problems earlier in the year, particularly around discipline and just doing dumb things, he seems to have cleaned that up, which is very good. Papali'i, he's been brilliant for them in recent weeks, and he was one of 4 players who were put forward as being the player of the year. It went to Nathan Cleary. I think the others might have been Edwards and Yeo, but Papali'i's been very good. Luke Garner, again, he's a quality professional player. I'm not quite sure. Luran Patea, he seems to have disappeared. I don't know if he's injured, but for mine, I've got to assume he's injured, because for mine, I'd have him in the 17. He was on fire when Penrith were making that run of wins, and I'm hoping he'll be back because he offers plenty off the bench. As far as the Warriors go, this is not their best team. We've talked about that. and the loss of Metcalf, and everyone's been talking about that for the last 4 months or so since he did his ACL, however long it's been. Might not have been quite that long, but they're not the same side. Tanner Boyd's been reasonably good, to be fair, but he doesn't worry the defenders like a Luke Metcalf does with his speed and ability to break the line. Boyd's got a decent kicking game, a good passing game, but he's not really a threat as a runner. Capewell out in the centres, I think they'll target him. He's a good scrambler in defence, but he does miss a lot of tackles. Dallin last week, he was like the old Dallin, who unfortunately is illiterate in reading defence. The commentators even sort of said, "Dallin, what are you doing?" I was saying that 10 years ago, watching him at Penrith Park. He's an enigma. He can do some brilliant things on a rugby league field, particularly when the ball is in the air and he can get that ball down and score 4-pointers. But gee, he can leak 4-pointers, and I think so. There's some targets there for the Penrith attack, and Dallin's going to have a busy night, I think. As far as the forwards go, the captain, James Fisher-Harris, taking on his old team. He's going to be absolutely fired up for this game. His clash with Moses Leota is going to be really interesting. Halasima, he's the game breaker. He's the man I fear from the Warriors. So, asked if, who's the one guy that you think can get the Warriors home? It's Halasima with his just unbelievable power running. He scores so many tries. He's been coming off the bench, but he's in the starting lineup. Whether that's got to do with injuries, I'm not sure. But the Warriors halves, that's where I think the difference is. That Penrith have got definitely the better halves. The forwards, I think, pretty much cancel each other out. Aaron Clark's had a great year for the Warriors, but I don't think the forwards, there's that much difference there. I think it's the halves that will get this game going Penrith's way. Shane, I've talked too long.
You're all right, mate. I agree with you.
Talked too long.
No, I agree with you. Look, the guy for me that I've got in my notes is Halasima. He's the guy for the Warriors that I think Penrith have to be genuinely worried about, because it's about position. It's about if the Warriors get into the attacking zone, get into the red zone of Penrith, well then things might happen. 4:05 our time, that is, that's dusk in New Zealand, so it's probably, we can say it's a night game.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that free flowing football that you'd see in a day game. I think Halasima, he's the guy for me for the Warriors. If he starts making 10-15 at will, it could be trouble. I've got the Panthers winning this one. I agree with you in every stretch of the imagination, Griff. I think that whoever wins this game, regardless if it's the Penrith Panthers or the Warriors, they're the nuisance factor going forward for the top four. I think the Panthers bench is better as well. You got a guy called Nathan Cleary. He's playing for the Panthers. That helps dramatically. DWZ, you're right, probably didn't have his best game. That also tells me I doubt very recently he doesn't do it in twos either. So I doubt he'd probably have a shocker again. Which means that if he wants to be at his absolute running and defensive best, well then, but yeah, Penrith are great. I've got Penrith Panthers winning this one, Griffo. But like I said, I think that the Warriors forward pack there can be slightly scary. At 7:50 on Saturday at Shark Stadium in Sydney, we see the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks taking on the Sydney Roosters. This is 5th plays 8th. I suppose Braden Trindle, Nakora in for the Sharks. The Roosters, it's Sandon Smith is named. Interesting to see where he plays. He's on the extended bench and see what happens there.
I don't think he's playing.
No, I don't think so either. This is going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be the number 7s, I think. Nico Hines and Sam Walker, to see how they pull their teams around. Marky Mark has been absolutely outstanding. I think Robert Toya, he's been the defensive centre of the year for mine. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. His choice at for Queensland was justified. What he did in State of Origin was phenomenal, and I think he's brought that beyond that. For me, he is the best defensive centre in the competition. I that's just my opinion. I think he's been brilliant, and he's really added another string to the bow. He's allowed the Roosters to, if their centre collapses and Angus Crichton and Victor Radley doesn't get, if they go that side, he gets them. I think he's been absolutely phenomenal. With Marky Mark, it's been something of a revelation. Their forward pack is very, very good. I think it's actually better than the Sharks. For me, it's about the Sharks being far more cohesive. The guy that needs to find form again is Will Kennedy if the Sharks want to win. He's up against probably the in-form fullback of the competition in James Tedesco. James Tedesco, old Teddy, he's found another cog from somewhere. And he's playing some fantastic football. I got the Roosters winning this one. I think across the park they own the Sharks. Sharks are at home. We know the Sharks are a different beast at home. This is knockout football at its finest. It'd be very interesting to see what happens, but I've got the Roosters winning this. They're playing week 2, Griff.
Yes, I do agree. Based on form, based on talent, but I'm not overly confident because, as you said earlier on, when we were going through the Roosters, discussing them, that every 2 or 3 weeks
they do have a hiccup.
They do, and they've had 2 very good games.
Is this the hiccup?
Is this the hiccup? And there's no tomorrow if
no, you're right. It's Mad Monday.
Yeah, I think they'll win. They've just been so good. Sharks. I just had a look at their bench, and I am surprised. They've got 3 props on there.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 props starting.
That's right.
That's unbalanced. I don't think that'll be the case. You mentioned Britton Nicker as an in.
He's on the
listed
reserves.
On the extended. Now he was suspended, wasn't he? Injured. He's got to come in.
I mentioned him because I know he's number 21.
Yeah.
I dare say he plays. Tom Hazelton, there's no hate to this guy, but I think he probably plays in that position there.
I think more likely
or
it'd be Hamwelly.
Yeah,
Hazleton's further up the pecking order.
Yeah.
He did have an injury.
I think Haminueli's going to cover. And the only reason I say that is because some late mail I read today is he might be used as a cover for some people who are maybe questionable coming into the team, and he can cover a few different things. Everyone fit. 100% agree with you, Griff.
Yeah, I'm going with the Roosters. Interesting. Like, if something happens to Blake Brayley, and he never does seem to get injured, but there is no replacement anywhere.
No.
Obviously, if Atkinson was in there, he could fill in, but that seems to be what they run with at the Sharks. They take that gamble that nothing's going to happen to their number 9. I hope for their sake, that nothing does happen. I will say I'm glad to see Nico there. The fact that he was going to be suspended for literally a nothing offence, they got it right. They realised they made a mistake. So glad to see Nico there. He's been in actually very good form recently, Nico, playing with confidence. They're playing, of course, at the biggest stadium in the Sutherland Shire. What does it hold? 11 or 12,000. That is a disgrace.
I can't believe they're playing finals football there. Yeah. That's disgusting.
I can't say it should be at Allianz because obviously that's the Roosters' home, but somewhere a little bit bigger than what is an embarrassment of a stadium. Sharks are doing the right thing.
I agree.
Gives them the best chance to win, but they've got to stop this embarrassment. Other codes could, they would laugh when they see a finals game played in front of a whole 12,000 people.
I'm going to say something highly controversial here. I think that for a finals game, the minimum place you should be playing is 30,000.
Yes, I agree. That's not controversial.
Minimum. It's a final. You'll get the people there. If you're going to a Portaloo for a piss in a finals game, there's something wrong. And I've extensively said my view on Shark Park over the years on this podcast. But Jesus, when I found out that they succumbed to putting it there, that is abysmal. It should not be at Shark Park. I understand that the Allianz Stadium is the official home ground of the Roosters. I fully get that. But you know what? It's the closest marquee ground. It's not our fault that you've created a shithouse home ground for this long and been happy to live there. I think it's abysmal, but that's...
I know Combag's a bit out of the way, but 30,000 seater, I think.
Fine. Yep.
You might not have filled it, but you're going to get at least 20,000, at least.
You know what? It's either that or fix up your own backyard. I think if you can't 30,000 seat stadium should be the minimum for a finals match, given, and this is the other thing I'm going to add to this, what are the public paying to go to Shark Park on the weekend?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, that is the worst rugby league ground I've ever watched football at. It's horrible. And
we were a semi-professional code.
Oh, the best seat in the house.
And that place has never got out of semi-professionalism.
And I've spoken about this extensively on the podcast. The best seat in the house is about halfway up the stairs on that side, the grandstand side. The parking's abysmal now. They've got Portaloos as, which when we're playing at Mudgee, when we're playing at Dubbo, I get that we have to have Portaloos, right? That's not what I'm saying. This is a marquee home ground, and the people have sat on their hands. Hats off to Four Pines. They saw it and they're starting to upgrade things. But Jesus, I can't believe we're playing the finals game here. It's a joke. Anyway,
we say it's every year. So
yeah, I agree.
And that's the thing. The team is a good team. They are a semi-finals team.
Yep.
They're never really threatened to win the comp, but they're going to be thereabouts.
The thing that frustrates...
So we have this same debate every year.
The thing that frustrates me, Griff, and I actually said this in defence of Penrith a couple of years ago. If you're happy to have that as your home game in week 1, you should be happy to have it in week 3. Don't tell me that we have to change places because all of a sudden we need a more marquee, we need more people, we need more this. If you can't sustain what you need in week 1, then in week 3 it shouldn't be in week 1. I think what we need to do is draw a line in the sand in Sydney and say, these are our premier grounds. Whether you like it or not, you're playing there. Full stop. And you know what? If you're a serious player in this game, you'll win anywhere. And get your fans there. And if they can't travel another 20 Ks, well, then that's a problem for them, not for us.
Exactly.
Anyway.
It's not that far.
No.
Right.
No. Well, on Sunday, GIO Stadium, at 4:05, we have the Canberra Raiders taking on the Brisbane Broncos. Look, I can talk about the ins for the Raiders. They're massive. That's just their normal side. Ethan Strange, Hudson Young, Jamal Fogarty, Jed Stewart, Joseph Tarpany, Josh Papali'i, K.O. Weeks, Matthew Timoko, Zach Hoskins, Tom Starling. They're basically the people that are in. Shibasaki is in for the Brisbane Broncos. He's in on the thing. Jock Madden's also been named, albeit on an extended bench. This is a vastly different side for the Raiders that took on their opposition last week. This is down to what can their 1-6-7-9 for the Broncos do, led by Guy Reece Walsh. I have not seen a guy play the brand of football he did. He is just ripe for what's coming up. KO Weeks a couple of weeks ago, though, absolutely outstanding. I am really torn with this match. As I'm looking at it now, I'm struggling. I look at what the Raiders are at home, and they're a juggernaut at home. I look at the Broncos, and the Broncos were absolutely brilliant. For me, I think that the Canberra Raiders have a steel about them that I've never seen before. Even when they played the grand final a couple of years ago and they were the side a couple of years ago, they didn't have this. They didn't have the steel they've got now. I'm picking the Canberra Raiders. I actually think the Raiders will win this one. They're not going to win it by much. I think they're going to. Who knows? It could even come down to golden point. But for me, I think the Raiders have got this just, and they're going to progress against a Broncos side, who they may even play later on. But the Broncos are ripe as well. I've got the Canberra Raiders at home, because when you flick a coin, you've got to pick the home side, Griffo.
Yeah, it's to me, this is the game of the weekend. The Raiders have been the best team this year, hence they were the minor premiers. They've got size, they've got skill, they've got speed, they've got power. And as I look at them, I think they have fewer weaknesses than the Broncos. I think the Broncos have probably got, at the top end, better players. I think Walsh and Haas are better individuals than the best in the Raiders side. But overall, I think the Raiders are a better team from certainly 1 to 17. Maybe not so much 1 to 13, but I'm looking at the bench.
Yeah, the bench is
Tyson
good.
Smoothie, Colby Hetherington, Ben Tolte, and Jaden Hunt. Now, that is not a bench that has me shaking, I've got to say.
No, I've got to agree with you there.
That's whereas Paddy's he's going to be.
Well,
if it weren't for Harry Grant, he'd be a long-term Queensland hooker. But Harry Grant's still a young man.
Looking at Morgan Smithies, what he's done.
Yes, look, Marriott has been fabulous all year, as has Simi Sasangi, which can sometimes be a bit of a tongue twister, but I got that out. I just think the bench is stronger. I do say that I don't think Papali'i will play. He's too important, and I talked about this earlier in one of the other games. I think I was talking about Kiraz. This is not an elimination final. There is a tomorrow if you lose. And I wouldn't risk Papali'i. He's been going around in a moon boot after an injury at training. I believe it was last Friday. I think it may have been an ankle. He wasn't going to play last week anyway. He wasn't named. But he's too important to risk. It might come off. But the flip side is he re-injures and he's out for the season. So I don't think that's needed in a game that's not an elimination. They've got very capable guys in Matty Nicholson and Trey Mooney on the extended bench, so they're not going to lose all that much. But the guy, if Canberra Raiders are to win this game, there's two guys that I think are going to be at the forefront. One is the fullback, KO Sports. He has been a revelation. The tries that he's scored this year are better than his highlights reel would be better than anyone else in the league. Reece Walsh is, obviously he's fantastic, but Weeks has gone the length of the field several times from kicks. And I don't think anyone else has been able. Maybe one or two have done it once or twice, but this is commonplace for him. And he was a guy who was at Manly. There were big raps on him, but he never quite was able to show his best form. And defensively, he got found out. He was playing mainly at 5'8", but at the back, he's been absolutely brilliant. The other guy who I'm a huge rap on, and I have been since I saw him playing the centres for the under-19 Blues maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and that's Ethan Strange. He is sort of a typical Canberra 6 in the ilk of Laurie Daly, Jack Whiten when he was a younger guy. Just big, powerful, strong runner, strong defender. Maybe not the best passing game, but his strength is his running game. And we saw what he did in that Moji miracle, where he went past Cleary, he went past Edwards, and then he gave the ball to KO Sports, who won the game. So I'm looking for Strange and the other guy, Fogarty, he will put Canberra in good field position. He's got the best long kicking game of anyone on this field, and that kicking game is going to be crucial. It's salivate in this game. I want Canberra to win. And I was thinking, I actually feel as though the Broncos are going to win. But then I looked at the bench and I thought, nah, I think the Raiders are stronger from 1 to 17. I'm going to stick with them. Canberra.
Yeah, I'm with you, Griff. Well, that's it. That's finals week 1. Any closing thoughts, Griffo?
Well, firstly, I want to say thank you to you, Shano, and thank you to our listeners. If you're still listening,
thanks, everyone.
Been one of our longer podcasts.
Well, we had a lot to talk about.
We had a lot to talk about. It's probably the best weekend of the year as far as the NRL goes, because you've got 4
phenomenal
high-quality games.
Yeah. There's phenomenal rugby league.
Next week, every week's important, but as the weeks go by, they get more important. But this is where we get 4 high-quality games with the 8 best teams in the comp. And so enjoy the weekend. Listeners, thank you again. And look forward to talking about the fallout and previewing next week.
Guys, after this week, we're going to be -2. This is the finals. It's what we live for. It's what we love rugby league for. Have a great week. I hope your team wins if they're in the final. And take care. Be good. Thanks for listening. Bye now.
Bye-bye.